no one gets you down. Keep moving on higher ground. Keep flying until you are the king of the kill. No force of a nature can break your will to self-motivate. She said this face that you see is destined for history.
Lyrics go, it goes, people really don't understand me.
You know, I say a lot of people misunderstand me. That's because they don't know me. I guess that's true. People believe a lot of crazy stories they read.
Yeah.
Some is true, some is not. And
does it hurt when you see those crazy stories?
sometimes, but it's part of the work, you know.
You ever want to lash out in any type of way and say, hey, that's not true?
Yeah, a lot of times. But why bring more attention to a thing, you know?
The media has been very clever in disassociating him from the black community, but when you go and see what he's been doing behind the scenes that he's never wanted any credit for, he's our biggest supporter from Africa, of our mother country, Africa. He's the #1 biggest supporter of our black colleges, always has been. He's never wanted any credit for this, you know. And I said, well, if that's not black, I don't know what is.
We have completed 2 films on Michael Jackson titled Michael Jackson's Love for His African Roots and Michael Jackson's Cultural Legacy and African-Centered Perspective. In this 3rd film, we are further constructing the culture legacy of Michael Jackson with new details from the previous 2 films and also added information on some of the general statements made in the previous films. In our last film, we highlighted 6 songs and musical videos that really show Michael Jackson's cultural expressions of African roots and political statements. The first one we talked about was the song "Wanna Be Starting Something" from the Thriller album. That had a Cameroon African chant that was very prevalent through a long stretch of the song. The second was the music video and song "Beat It," which was off the Thriller album, where Michael expressed and displayed the unification of gangs to end gang violence. Now keep in mind that Michael used real live gang members of the Bloods and Crips in Los Angeles. And this was very rare and very courageous because this was at the height of gang violence between the 2 groups in the early 80s. The third was from the song and music video "Bad" off the Thriller album. This was telling the story of a young brother from the ghetto that came back from school to some former friends and was fatally injured due to peer pressure and some other issues.
This kid who went to school upstate in the country or whatever, who is from the ghetto, and he tried to make something of his life. And he would leave his old friends behind. And when he came back, on spring break or whatever, Thanksgiving break, his friends became so jealous of him that they killed him. But in the film, I Don't Die, of course. So it's a true story that we had taken from Time or Newsweek magazine. And he is a black kid like me, and it's a sad story. But pardon?
How does that make you feel when you see those sad stories?
Oh, something like that is very sad because it's all negative, it's wrong. I think that's life, to want to grow and become more. And like you plant a seed and it grows into something beautiful. And it never dies, really. I think people should be that way.
The 4th was from the music video "Remember the Time" off the Dangerous album, where Michael Jackson's symbolic message was for us to remember the time of our great African past with the correct portrayal of kings, queens, and African people of Kemet, aka ancient Egypt. The 5th was the music video "Black or White" from the Dangerous album, where Michael Jackson transformed into a Black Panther, which was symbolic to revolution and resistance. And lastly, we talked about 2 music videos, and the most overt protest song of Michael Jackson's career off the History album called They Don't Care About Us. One short film was shot in Brazil to heighten the awareness of the assault on the youth by the authorities there, and the second film was exposing America's mass incarceration prison camp, basically saying that the youth and the masses are not valued, and he demonstrated in that prison version of the video several human rights abuses inflicted on African people. Now we want to discuss and examine 2 more short films and songs that displays Michael Jackson's most deep cultural roots to Africa. The first being Liberian Girl.
So Kutsi wanted some kind of African little intro thing here. So this is Michael Boddicker on synth and all these effects, kind of giving African sunrise sort of thing.
I mean, people are underestimating how radical that was. Nobody else was writing songs about African women as beautiful in 1987, 88.
How are you? So nice to see you again, eh? Yes.
I've had the time of my life here. I've had so much fun. I hate to leave.
Here's the biggest pop star in the world who quote unquote is making himself look white, and yet he's very engaged with beauty and the idea of Africa as a site of beauty. It just speaks to the fact that Michael had a very strong African consciousness. He went to Africa a lot. He was very engaged.
The song received a positive reception in Liberia, with women from the country viewing the song as empowering. Liberian woman Margaret Carson said in an interview with the Washington Times, when that music came out, the Liberian girls were so astonished to hear a great musician like Michael Jackson thinking about a little country in Africa. It gave us hope, especially when things went bad. It made us feel that we were still a part of the world. Finally, let's focus on Michael Jackson's film Moonwalker that was released in 1988. In the closing credits, there was a segment that displayed Ladysmith Black Mambazo performing The Moon is Walking in Club 30's amidst behind-the-scenes clips. Ladysmith Black Mambazo is a male choral group from South Africa that rose to prominence as a result of singing with Paul Simon on his album Graceland, and have won multiple awards, including 4 Grammy Awards. They were formed by Joseph Shabalala in 1960 and later became one of South Africa's most prolific recording artists, with their releases receiving gold and platinum disc honors. The group has also now become a mobile academy, teaching people about South Africa and its culture.
Come and see the moon is walking. The moon come and see the moon is walking. The moon is shining. Come and see the moon is dancing. Come and see the moon. Come and see. Come and see. This is a miracle. Come and see. Come and see. Come and see. The moon is dancing.
We briefly discussed in the last 2 films of Michael Jackson's travels to Africa, but here we want to give you a timeline of what he was doing and what was actually going on while he was there. Michael Jackson was that rare public figure that you actually do want to see dance with the welcoming party, which he did in 1974 when he arrived in Senegal as part of the Jackson 5. Michael Jackson's first trip to Africa was formative. He went to spend time in Tunisia, Gabon, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Tanzania, Egypt, and South Africa. And in May of 1992, interview with Ebony magazine, he described the continent as home. During the interview, he reflects warmly of his 1992 tour. For me, it's like the dawn of civilization. It is the root of all rhythm. To his credit, MJ went on to mention his efforts to increase his understanding of the politics of the countries he visited. In the 1990s, Michael Jackson made a series of high-profile visits to African countries as part of the non-performing tour which he took on the condition that he would be able to visit orphanages, children's hospitals, churches, schools, and playgrounds. Under the glare of the international press, which concocted a variety of stories, he spent time in Gabon, Egypt, Tanzania, Cote d'Ivoire, where he was crowned a king. In Gabon, he was welcomed by people holding signs that read, "Welcome home, Michael." While in Cote d'Ivoire, he was crowned a prince of the Anya people. When he died, he also received a funeral in Cote d'Ivoire. In February of 1992, Michael traveled to Gabon at the invitation of one of Africa's longest-serving rulers, Omar Bongo. More than 100,000 people gathered to greet him, and he received the West African nation's Medal of Honor from President Omar Bongo, who was the official host of the performance tour. President Bongo told Michael that he was the first entertainer to receive the medal, which until then had only been given to heads of state and high-ranking dignitaries, including Nelson Mandela. President Bongo appointed his daughter, Palestine Bongo, and his son, Ali Bongo, to coordinate the tour along with Charles Bobbitt, and consultant to the president, who initiated the idea of Jackson's visit. Omar Bongo's granddaughter gave reflections of Michael Jackson's trip. "I met him in Africa when he came to my country and spent 3 days in my family's house when he visited our village. I was about 7 or 8 years old. My best memory is when my cousins and I tried to teach him our African language. He really loved everything about Africa and wanted to know everything about it. Michael Jackson loved his race and loved Africa. He was fond of the African arts, mostly the tribal mask and the pygmy, and he was obsessed with the traditional African dance." In 1995, Michael Jackson presented twice President of Ghana, Jerry Rawlings, with 2 gold swords on behalf of Saudi Royale during a banquet for Rawlings at the Beverly Hills Hotel in California.
I was advised of your presence in Los Angeles, and when I found out about your purpose and your mission to rebuild the continent of Africa, I couldn't resist. I love Africa. I adore Africa. I've always loved Africa. I want you to know you're not alone. I'm here with you. You're always in my heart. We're never apart.
Michael Jackson in return received the Diamond of Africa Award from Ghana's president, Jerry Rawlings. As part of his 1996-1997 world tour, Michael Jackson performed in Tunisia and in Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Durban of South Africa. And in 1999, standing beside South Africa's president, Nelson Mandela, MJ said, "I've had the time of my life here. I've had so much fun, I hate to leave. And I'm definitely looking for a home here to buy to spend the rest of my life here." The term beatboxing is derived from the mimicry of the first generation of drum machines, then known as beatboxes. Human beatboxing and hip-hop originated in the 80s with the early pioneers of Dougie Fresh, Swiftly, Buffy, and Wise. But Michael Jackson was also known to record himself beatboxing on a dictation tape recorder as a demo and scratch recordings to compose several of his songs.
Hit it.
What you're hearing is not an electric drum machine. It's a hardwired, 48-track, digitally mastered human.
What I mean, so I'll take that and use that as the main foundation for the track and build all the sounds around that. You know what I'm saying?
Where did that he thing come from? It just comes out of singing. Wait. I gave my money, I gave my time, I gave her everything in life one heart could find. It doesn't seem to matter and it doesn't seem right, but the will is brought no fortune, still I cry alone at night. Don't you judge of my composure, cause I'm bothered every day. And she didn't leave a letter, she just up and ran away. Ow! Fabulous.
Michael Jackson gets a ton of credit for bringing in the urban or street culture of dance into popular culture. It's evident throughout many of his videos. Just some examples are the music video Bad, the music video The Way You Make Me Feel, and the music video Jam are just a few examples.
The moonwalk is a dance that I would love to take credit for, but I can't because I have to be completely honest here. These black children in the ghettos they have the most phenomenal rhythm of anybody on the earth. I'm not joking. I get a lot of ideas from watching black children, and they have perfect rhythm. So just riding through Harlem, I remember in the early, late 70s, the early 80s, I would see these kids dancing on the street, and I saw a kid doing this kind of sliding backwards, kind of illusion dancing, I call it. And I took a mental picture of it, a mental movie of it, and I went into my room upstairs in Encino, and I started to just do it and dance and create and perfect it. But it definitely started within black culture, no doubt. And that's where it comes from.
We started with maybe like 10 or 12 dancers, and he then introduced me to Jeffrey, and he said, I'd like Jeffrey to be part of this, and maybe there's some street stuff, because I've been working with Jeffrey and and privately, and he's teaching me some stuff.
See, the thing about it is Michael can't go out to clubs and hang out because he's Michael Jackson. So through me, he was picking up what was happening in the hood, and I'm taking it to his gallery over at the Jackson House on Havenhurst.
My name is Phyllis Brooks, and I want to direct my question to all you guys. Who teach you guys your dance steps?
One guy I saw on the show, Don Campbell, he changed my life. He did not dance like everybody else. He didn't move like everybody else. He just walking to the beat. Walking. Jump up, stop, stick out his own hand, give himself 5, hunch his shoulders, point it, pow. And that was locking. You can see Michael doing, you can see him doing those. He's putting this locking in his, you can see he's just incorporating little things into his stepping like that, Funky chicken, that's a funky chicken. So these dances came from Soul Train too. Michael Jackson, he loves it. He loves the locking, he loves the popping. Michael is deep into the urban contemporary dance, because I don't call it street dance anymore. It's left the streets years ago.
If we look at Michael Jackson's discography, starting with Thriller, he made cultural, social, and political statements either through song or music short film. But we want to discuss briefly on 2 of his solo albums outside of Thriller, Bad, and Dangerous. The History album not only records Michael's most overt protest song, but it also holds his most political and social statements as well. On the second disc, songs like Scream, This Time Around, Earth Song, DS, Money, Tabloid Junkie, Too Bad, History are songs that consist of him speaking out against the media, against the establishment, global and environmental concerns, and the importance of creating our own legacy. This is really a testament to Michael because he was raised as a Jehovah's Witness that teaches their followers to be apolitical. Now let's talk about Michael's final recorded studio album, Invincible. Not only was this album dedicated to his parents and grandmother, but it was also dedicated to Benjamin Hermanson. The reason for this is partly due to the fact that Omar Bhatti and Michael Jackson were close friends, and Bhatti was at the same time a good friend of Benjamin Hermanson. Benjamin Hermanson was a Norwegian-born Ghanaian boy whose father was born in Ghana, mother was Norwegian, was stabbed to death in Oslo, Norway just before midnight on January 26, 2001 by people of the neo-Nazi group, the Boot Boys. Two men were convicted of murder and sentenced to 18 years in prison, and a third defendant was convicted of a lesser charge of abetting bodily harm causing death and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Since the murder was motivated by racism, it mobilized large parts of the Norwegian population. Throughout the entire country, marches were organized to protest against the murder, with nearly 40,000 people participating in Oslo. Michael Jackson publicly gives special thanks on his album, and it writes, "This album is dedicated to Benjamin Benny Hermanson. May we continue to remember not to judge a man by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. Benjamin, we love you. May you rest in peace." As we mentioned before, the importance of our duty to keep and record accurate portrayals of the complex legacies of our leaders and figures. Clearly, Michael Jackson was more pro-African in his cultural art expressions and actions than many of these other so-called pro-African artists that sang about it but didn't act on it and didn't show the same genuine love that Michael Jackson did. That goes again to us studying with a fine-tooth comb our leaders and figures and keep an accurate representation of their life and legacy in the forefront. This is also why we need to study for ourselves, think for ourselves, and come to our own conclusions, as this will also allow us to detect and correct any fallacies that are designed to marginalize and distort not only our leaders and figures, but us as a whole.
But you, brother, you have meant a lot to people, man.
Thank you so much.
And I want to say something to you special, too, man, because a lot of people don't get this one to you. But I got to tell you something. You done meant something to black people, man. And don't ever think you don't and you haven't. Wow. But you have really, really meant something to a lot of minorities across this country. And you remember that about your music, man. You remember that about your videos. You touch us that way. And I'm giving you something, man, just from one brother to another that the mainstream America can't give to you. But it's what you have done in representing black people.
I'm proud of my heritage.
Come on, player, say it.
I'm proud of it. I'm proud to be black. I'm honored to be black. And I just hope that one day that they will be fair in portraying me the way I really, really am.